Hello everyone, Druid Peter here. This video right here goes over a digital process that I've developed for turning regular photographs into images that look more like they were created as digital art. Please note, however, I am not a hot 20-something-year-old girl, currently, and so I feel it in everyone's best interests that I spare all of you from having to witness my ungodly visage. In order to do that, I would like to thank Y.Uno, or Uno as I feel most people call her, for graciously allowing me to use one of the photographs from her Instagram channel for this tutorial. In exchange, I also would like to take a very brief moment to plug her channel both now and at the end of the video. So, I don't really remember how I stumbled onto Yuno's Instagram channel, but ever since I did, I've really gotten a lot of laughs and smiles out of the content she posts. Her sense of humor and personality definitely sets her apart from a lot of the other content that usually gets forgotten about like 2 seconds after you watch it. I definitely recommend you check out her feed. She works really hard to produce the stuff that she does, and I definitely think she deserves a ton of support. You can find a link to her Instagram channel in the comments. So, one of the first things that we need to do here is let's make sure that the image is an appropriate size. I find that this technique works best when the width of the image is around 800 pixels and the height is more or less around the same, taking into account different aspect ratios and such. That's because some of the techniques involved don't really work too well when the image is very large. They have a greater effect on the image when they're used on a small image. Of course, as things go forward, we will eventually resize the image to a larger size at the end of the tutorial. So, the image is a good size, so I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I like to have this layer at the bottom be the original photo. Original photograph. And then this one is going to be the color base. So I'm going to duplicate it twice. And then the top layer, I'm going to rename this to Loom Adjust. And then what I'm going to do is we are going to desaturate this image. Color values from black to white and everything in between. And then the line on the histogram chart. Oh, wait a second. I'm not sure this is showing up. It's not. Okay, and we're back. And now you can see the adjust color curves dialog. I'm going to have to be on that for next videos. Need to pay attention to that, to those sort of things. So, the bar on the bottom represents color values, and the histogram at the top, this line here, represents how many pixels within the image have that color value. Okay? And then the bar on the left, right here, as you see, is the color that we want to adjust pixels of this color value to. So, for example, at a perfect one-to-one correspondence from the bottom left to the upper right, a pixel at, say, this value right here has exactly the same value over here, and that's because we haven't actually adjusted anything. But if I click a point right here and I move it up like this, then a pixel with a color value right here has a color value shifted from its normal position to be lighter. And then it does that for all the pixels as described by this curve. Neat. So what are we going to do? Well, take a look at this histogram. We want to essentially... that's a linear histogram. We'll go with this. So what we want to do is we kind of want to flatten things out a little bit. So wherever there's a peak, okay, we want to make it a little bit darker. And then wherever there's a trough, say about right here, we want to make it a little bit lighter. By doing this, we essentially compress a lot of the striations in tone, a lot of the variation in tone, so that it doesn't look as perfectly, so that you don't get a perfectly smooth transition from specific color tones. But you have to be careful, because if you do it too much, then you get weird situations where you get that sort of artificial cakey look. Oh, you know what? That actually doesn't look too bad. Well, it depends on what style you're going for as well. So I'm going for more of a painterly style. So I think I'm going to move this a little bit right there. I actually like how by giving a little bit of the shimmer, you get a little bit of the artistic effect. Now at the edges, I usually ignore this rule and pretty much always make the whitest whites whiter. And I pretty much always make the darkest darks darker. And I find that that usually gives a really good effect. So this is making this a little bit, I'm not sure I want. I'll keep it this way. Now, up here, you don't want to get too crazy with trying to flatten out the curve perfectly. You just want a little bit. So up here, the pixels are a bit higher already. So do I want to lower it a little bit more? Yeah, yes, I do. I want to lower it just. Now I'm on the fence about having the correction be so extreme here. If you see how the line is practically horizontal between these two values, that's because you're compressing the variation in tone quite a lot, and as a result you're getting very stark contrasts between regions of pixels that have this color versus this color. I think I'm gonna not have it flattened quite so much. Let me see. I think I'm going to adjust it just a little bit. This is starker than I normally would do, but we can give it a shot and see how it works out. So now that we've adjusted the tones, let's change the color mode of the desaturated layer to LCH lightness. Okay, and that's actually pretty good. I like that. Now then, what I want to do is, okay, so what's next? Oh, right. So next what I'm going to do here is, let me put the color mode back to the blend mode back to normal. So now we're going to do some basic quality of life updates. So the first thing that I always recommend is performing a wavelet decompose, because we want to simplify fine detail without getting rid of important detail. So if we zoom closely, like this, and so what the wavelet decompose does is it decomposes an image layer into multiple layers of varying fineness to how much detail they add to the image. So scale 1 is very fine detailed data, and scale 2 is more and more less refined data. And then, of course, residual is everything else that's very, very blurry and very, very... because you that didn't qualify as fine enough to be in any of the lower levels. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to get rid of the first layer. Now, you usually can get away with getting rid of the first layer when you have a smaller image. If your image is larger, you might want to get the first two. Get rid of the first two layers. And if you have to get rid of the first three or more layers, then you're doing something wrong. So we really just want to get rid of the fine details as much as possible, but we want to keep the general forms as good as possible, as intact as possible. So now I'm going to merge down, which will, well, I'll merge the layer group first, and then I'll merge it down, just so you can see, though you guys should be able to just hit merge down, and it'll merge everything back to luminance adjust. So now that I've done that, let me go over to filters, go to blur, enhance, and I want to do a noise reduction. Noise reduction is really great for adding sort of synthetic smoothing processes. Look at that. At strength 4, it already looks pretty good. I like that. But let's see what strength. Okay, 16 is for more if you really, really want that painterly style. And you know what? This works really nicely because I was worried about the shimmer of the highlights of her skin. I was afraid that it was going to come off as too harsh, but the noise reduction and the wavelet decompose really, really helped with that, so that's good. I am quite happy with that. Now then, what we're going to do next is we're going to do, for our final quality of life improvement, we're going to use a median blur just to get a much better painterly style. But you really, really want to be careful, especially at these sizes. You really don't want a lot. This, like this, actually looks a bit overdone. So I'm going to drop it just 1 pixel. Drop the radius by 1 pixel. Actually, looks like it's right there in the sweet spot. Let me see what 1 and 0 looks like. Yeah, as usual, 0 doesn't do anything. 1 is good, but we can do better. Actually, 1 might be perfectly appropriate if you're trying to keep more detail in the image. But we're going to go 2 just to give it a little bit more of an artsy, painterly style. I do think 3 is too much. Now, to adjust things a little bit further, we can adjust the percentile, which makes the sort of, I'm not sure what it would call it, but the sort of substitute brush strokes either thicker or thinner. So if we go this way, it makes everything, well, like that. Then if we go this way, it makes everything a little bit thicker. For art, since we're going for more of an art style, we probably want to make it a little bit thicker. But again, you don't want to go too crazy. I like to round off the number to something nice and round. Ooh, oh, I'm sorry. But I have to remember in which direction we're going. And so that's 35. And alpha percentile does not matter because we don't have any alpha in the image. So I will simply leave that at 50 and we will be good. I usually don't mess with Abyss policy. Let me see what this does. Absolutely nothing. Let's try high precision. Also does absolutely nothing. So we're good. Okay, so now we've gotten a nice sort of painterly texture, but we're not done yet. One of the things that doing all of this produces is it makes everything pretty smooth and somewhat monotone. A lot of the tones sort of blend into the others, and you get this sort of slight blurry effect that, while it's certainly it's possible that art will have that across the entire image. Usually when working with artistic, with actual art, usually there's some crisper images in there. So let's create another layer. Create a new layer, and I'm going to call it edge adjust. Wait, No, I'm sorry. I was supposed to duplicate this layer. Duplicate, and then edge adjust. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit edge detect. And we're going to use difference of Gaussians. Now, I typically use difference of Gaussians. I have explored using other edge detection algorithms, but feel free to explore others as well. I have not verified that this is the absolute best way of doing this, so feel free to experiment. But for our purposes, I'm going to use difference of Gaussians. I'm going to reduce radius 1, and that's to make the edges, because we really, really want to see where the edges are in the image. So having radius 1 be small really gives us that high level of precision. And then radius 2, I'm also going to increase that in the opposite direction because we really, really want the selection, or as you'll see, we want those edges to be very prominent for our selection method. Now, having said that though, I'm going to do something very quickly that I did not do with the previous process. The last time I did this particular image, I'm actually going to add a color curves adjustment. And the reason why is because we really, really want prominent edges to be sharpened again. But areas where there's like this texture and everything, this is detail that we really don't want to reintroduce back into the image. And so what I'm going to do here is going to kind of look at where things are. So white, it looks like we don't have anything that's super white. Most of the whitest pixels are in this range right here. So I'm going to put a node right there because we want to keep those more or less the same. And then it looks like blacks are over here. Going to keep the midtones the same, and then these areas I want to sort of, there we go, kind of drag them down, kind of like that. Okay, because we really, really want just and what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to increase the whiteness factor just like that. We want clean edges to be more prominent. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to apply a generic dilate filter. And this is going to increase the area of the white areas. So that's going to be the because we want to have a selection that's slightly larger than the actual edges themselves. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, that's perfect. So now I'm going to select the black because it's easier to select the black. There's more parts of the image that are that color, and then I'm going to hit Control I to invert the selection. These are the areas where we want to go back to the original luminance adjust, and we want to apply a general sharpen filter, an unsharp mask. Now let me zoom in a little bit because sometimes it can get a little bit difficult to sort of tell. I want to, oh, you know what? I forgot. I am so sorry. I still need to expand the selection just a tad bit. So now that the white area is selected, I'm going to go over here to the grow selection, and I'm just going to grow by 4 pixels. That should be fine. Ooh. The larger the selection, the larger you make the selection, the more prominent the sharpen effect will have. So you do need to be careful. And you know what? I need to have feather edges selected as Otherwise, the transition between the sharpened areas and the unsharpened areas will be simply too dramatic, and we don't want that. 5 pixels is a good start. Normally, you might want to experiment, but we're fine. So edge adjust, Shift O. All right, from the top, people. Ooh, that did not. You know what? No, I'm gonna turn feather edges off. That did not look good at all. Oh, I see. That's because I had the wrong. Never mind. I had the wrong layer activated. There we go. Okay, good. Good, good, good. Control I. Turn this filter, this layer off. And now what we're going to do here is I'm going to go back and we are going to unsharp mask. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. Let's see. You can probably play more or less around with this. I'm not sure. Reset this to 3. Let's see here. I think I can increase the sharpness quite a bit, really. See, if I go there, it's blurry. If I go there, oh my! I really can increase the sharpness quite a lot in this area. Let's see what that looks like. That's going to give me super sharp edges. That's... Oh, wow. Okay. You know what? I like that. I like that a lot. That really brings out the artistic quality. It looks... Yes, that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Like you know herself. Okay, so now that we have that, let's get rid of the edge adjust. So, how else can we make our image look more like art and less like a photograph? Oh. Windows. Okay. So, how else can we make our image look less like a photograph and more like an artwork? Well, one of the things that we can do here is we can take into account that in real life, saturation often does not work the same way we do it in artwork. But we don't want to simply apply a basic saturation filter because that's going to introduce some terrible artifacts. See, if I just move this all the way up, well, that actually doesn't look too bad. But I've got a better way. That is, or rather, that's not what we're going to do today. So we're going to do this. I'm going to duplicate luminance adjust. I got rid of the edge detect filter because it was no longer needed. And I'm going to rename this to saturation adjust 1. Now, let's see here. And I'm going to take this back to normal blend mode. And then I'm going to perform a threshold operation on it. So what does this do? Basically, it applies a threshold. Any pixel that is lighter than this point, which the black triangle demarcates, is going to be, I believe, white. Yes. And any pixel that is darker than the black triangle just becomes straight up black. So we are separating the whites from the blacks in a way that is determined by this division line. So what I'm going to do here is I want the white pixels to be the ones that are the whitest values in the image, but I need to be careful because, see, preview, I need to make sure that the ones I'm selecting form an overall good balance. So if I zoom in, for example, on the top of her stomach, I want, yeah, see, too much is selected as white, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that the actual areas that are converted to pure white are primarily the highlights of her skin, or the highlights of the image, and not the midtones. That is tricky. I think this will work. Usually, you'll get better results if you have relatively small islands. So this actually should work. The only exception is, her shirt is white, so of course the majority of that needs to be white. That's perfectly fine. Now I'm going to select the white areas, disable that, and then we're going to go over here to the luminance adjust. And what we're going to do over here is I'm going to desaturate the areas, the highlights, to make the image look a little bit more shiny and plasticky, which is something, this right here is mostly aesthetic. An aesthetic preference on my part. I usually like highlights to be less saturated. Why is this? It's because I'm selecting the wrong image, the wrong layer. Now it should work. So we decrease the saturation. This had better be working. Oh yeah, it is working. Okay. Let me zoom in so it's more noticeable. So we want to decrease the saturation values of the highlights to make them look wider. Okay. And this is an aesthetic preference on my part. You would likely want to do something different if you wanted to do something different, but I actually really like how desaturated highlights work. Now then, one more thing that can be done is we're going to duplicate luminance adjust again, and we're going to duplicate the layer again, and we're going to rename this one saturation adjust 2. And that's because typically the midtones in art tend to be more saturated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform another threshold operation, like so. And this time we want to select, let me make sure that normal blend mode is selected so that we can see what we're doing. And we don't want to select blacks, because, or the darkest colors. We leave those alone. We want the mid-tone areas to be selected for this. This looks more or less okay. Yeah, that I think works fairly nicely. I mean, I could probably adjust it a bit more. But it'll be fine. And you know what? Let me do a quick median blur. No, we're not doing that. That's a terrible idea. Okay. So now we select whites again. Oh, and we also want to make sure that there's no overlapping white areas, because we don't want to undo any of the saturation adjustment prior. So we make sure to deselect any areas that saturation adjust 2 has selected that might be overlapping with the white areas of saturation adjust 1. So now that we've done that, go back to the color base, and what we're going to do is we're going to increase the saturation to something that an actual artist might make. Now we don't want to go too crazy. It's kind of hard to see with the borders, so it's possible to push it too far. And if you do push it too far, then you'll get this weird sort of saturation border around the image, and you don't want that. So 1.2 seems like I can go a little bit further. Yeah, no, that's too much. There we go. That's I probably could get away with this, but I don't like it. It's too much. Let's go back down to 1.27 seems appropriate. All right, and then yeah, that works. And so now we have a non-reality based saturation spread. And already she's looking very, very nice as far as art goes. Now, there are, I guess I can get rid of these saturation adjust layers. I don't need them anymore. Now, to make things a little bit even more artsy, let's create a new layer. Well, first let me say, at this point, we have successfully taken a photograph, and we've turned it into something that looks very artistic, and I really do like it. However, at this point, if you want, you can experiment and use your full repertoire of digital manipulation that you want, because at this point you basically are working with the finished end product or a far along end product of just a regular digital artwork, and you can edit it in various ways, just like you would if you were a regular digital artist. So I'm going to hit new from visible. So now we have this. Sorry. And I can hide these. And now we can toggle back and forth to look at, there's the original photograph. And here's the artwork. And boy, it looks pretty good. But we're not done yet. We can do, so let's experiment and do various other things. So this, I'm going to use a color compress, or, well, color adjust. And what I'm going to do here is just to sort of give a little bit more of a theme. Let me pick like a red or something like that to give the image a bit more of color coordination. Let's see what a soft light does. Ooh. Now I don't want too much because then it looks kind of super monotone. We want to, that brings out a little bit more of the warmth of the image. I'm not sure if we just want a little bit. We don't want to go too crazy. That's fine. Okay, so now moving over to the digital side of things. Let's see. Is there anything I want to do that's not going to make me look like an idiot? Yeah, there is something. Let's add a bit more shine to these eyes. Dynamics, let me activate Sarah Dynamics, should be fine. And I'm going to do opacity right here, and that's not doing anything. Oh, it's because mode is on overlay. My bad. That is not. What's going on here? That should be white. Is that because... Let me add a new layer on top. And then if I go here... Oh, I know why. It's because my opacity is super low. I'll just bring it up to like... Yeah, there we go. Give some nice shine in them eyes. Oh, wow. Looks kind of watery, but okay, there we go. So that's not bad. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, with the airbrush, I'm going to, let's see, if I want to add, I usually find adding some sort of airbrushed effect to the skin helpful. I'm not going to do too much because trying to actually figure out what I want at the same time that there's like a tutorial usually can be pretty difficult, so I'll just do a little bit to give an example of stuff that can be done. Wait a second. Let's make this addition. I want to emphasize. Ooh. Well, I gotta be careful. The sort of add some pinkish tones to these shadows right here. I'm not actually sure if that's. I want something kind of like that. Let's see here. Kind of emphasize the subsurface scattering a little bit. Usually by adding a kind of color to the shadowy tones, we can get a more pronounced subsurface scattering type effect, which I think is usually quite nice. Adding a bit of pinkness to this right here will actually look very, very nice. Same thing with, gotta be careful because I'm painting on the texture, but it's fine. Well, sort of. We just wanna, so you might want to add something like this to help give it more of an actual artistic feel. And again, this is actually pretty light on my end. Normally, if this was not a tutorial, I probably would go a little bit further and experiment a little bit more. However, I do want to give off at least some semblance of the idea that I know what I'm doing. So that's kind of a thing. Let's see here. Reduce the size a little bit. Opacity's at 79. Aerodynamic. No, that should be fine. Let me add like an acrylic style brush. And okay, now what I want to do here is I want to do another addition. So saturation up here. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Let's see here. No, that does not work at all. So that means, oh wait, it's no longer, it's not normal. It's what's going on? It's not doing nothing. Oh, okay. I guess I had an accidental selection somewhere. Weird. So if I go, what? It's still not doing that. But if I go in here, no? Oh, I think I know what's going on. The brush size is, yeah, okay. That's what, Jesus Christ. Let me change the dynamic to something a little bit more predictable. Mossy Stone. Mossy Stone's probably, alright, sure, I'll use Mossy Stone. Why not? And let me go to Visible and let me select something like this. Increase the size. Okay. Let's see here. I want to increase the glisten effect. This, but maybe addition. Maybe. No, that ain't gonna work. It's gotta be normal. Increase the shine of her lips a little bit. Oh. increase the size maybe? Let's see. No, that doesn't work at all. Okay. Yee. That does not work too well. There we go. I think I may have overdid it a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. We kind of want something like that. And then I want to, let's see here. I want to smudge this a little bit because we don't want this line. This line here is simply too stark. And as a result, it kind of comes off weird, so soften it a little bit. There we go. Just like that. We just want it softened a little bit, maybe. And then on this end, soften it up a bit. And yeah, okay. So there you have it. I may have overdone it with the glisten effect on her eyes, but overall I'd say that this is a really good base to jump off from if you want to continue working with the artwork, the digital artwork that you've created from your photograph. And it really does look quite nice. I'm quite pleased with how this one came out. But pretty much so the only thing left to do, since I'm going to be ending this now, is I'm going to do a new from visible to show the final product, hide all of these, and we'll just talk. Let me tell you what. I know what I'm going to do. Let me go to canvas size so that we can have a sort of side-by-side comparison. Width is going to be 200. I'm going to duplicate the width, double the width of the image. And then I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to move it so that you can now see a proper before and after. Let's see, tab. There we go. Wow, that looks really nice. So, thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope it has been helpful. I want to create more tutorials like this as I get a little bit further along in my career, and hopefully I'll see you guys another time. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to help me make more, please consider supporting me on Subscribestar. Link in comments below. Thank you.